Good evening, everyone. So tonight, the board and our guest, our educational services team will present to you again why change in education design is the best recommendation, is the best for our students. You may recall last spring, I asked the educational services team to present this plan to you as an alternative to the master facilities plan, part two, phase two of phase one, part two of phase one, that was presented in 2013. This plan's recommendation was the following: K-5 elementary schools, 6-8 middle schools, 9-12 high school, and pre-K in all the elementary schools. Note the late facilities recommendation on page 19, that no alterations to current grade configuration and more time was needed to determine what was ideal for the district. The instructional leaders at that time recommended that it was best to keep the current configuration, as outlined on page 22 of that plan. And it was also important to note that after surveying the Cleveland Heights Teachers Union, that there was no consensus around a particular configuration. So fast forward a year later, and I have taken more time to rethink my earlier recommendation to you last year, and not solely based on the current financial picture of our high school project, which we recognize and know the budget has exceeded our initial projections. However, we also recognize that historical preservation projects and renovations of that sort are often cost more than we anticipate. We also recognize that because of an increased cost in our renovations, that we've had budget challenges for part two of phase one, in which are renovating the 2 middle schools, which is outlined in the master facilities plan. Another challenge are the new graduation requirements. So beginning with the class of 2018, the state has increased the requirements to ensure that Ohio students are graduating ready to succeed in college and careers. This desire for Ohio's youth is the same desire that we have outlined in our mission statement, that our students or our schools will provide a challenging and engaging education to prepare our students to become responsible citizens and succeed in college and careers. So challenging and engaging are two key terms for me. And we want to make sure that we provide educational opportunities for kids that's not solely based on memorizing facts, but is learning in various ways and allowing our students to demonstrate mastery in ways that are important to us. At the same time, looking at our resources that we have outlined, our goals and strategic plan goal 5, and becoming more focused on our student experiences pre-K-12, providing teacher supports and professional development, and addressing the realities of our student enrollment, maximizing our current resources, and forward thinking about the unlimited possibilities that we can offer for our students and our community. So this is the superintendent who's bringing this recommendation before you again to say that I believe what the Ed Services team has provided and what they provided last year was the best recommendation, and it's the best for our community moving forward. So tonight they're going to present that recommendation. They're going to outline for you how that recommendation benefits the kids in the various grade spans and how we believe that this is best for the students in our community. So I turn it over at this time to our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Felicia Gould.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you again for the opportunity to allow Ed Services to come before you to share a school grade configuration recommendations. As Dr. Dixon has stated this evening, we will be looking at a reconfiguration that aligns with strategic plan goals, new graduation requirements, college and career readiness, and a recommendation for those particular grade spans. You will hear from the entire educational service team throughout the presentation. looking at each of the grade spans. As Dr. Dixon has already shared, that our 5-year strategic plan goal talks about Heights 2020, the path to student success. As our district strategic plan has assisted us in focusing the goals that prepare students for this Heights 2020 path to student success, we start with the beginning looking at goal 1, student outcomes. What do we want students to know? How do we know that their learning has taken place? What will we do when it has not occurred? And what will we do when students have mastered it? And how will we provide support for our professional staff during this path to student success? Under strategic goal 2, our educational approach, we want to ensure that each and every student has access to a quality education. And strategic goal 3, parent and community engagement, is the very room we were sitting in here last evening working with parents and community to come together to provide those additional services of utilizing our efforts and engaging a partnership in a collaborative way. We want to begin with the end in mind. What does a CHUH graduate profile say for a student at Cleveland Heights University Heights? At CHUH, a graduate profile is a profile that our school can communicate with a shared understanding of what a future-oriented learner looks like. Graduate profiles describe skills, knowledge, and attitudes that students will need to develop in order to participate in a range of life contexts beyond school. As we go through our presentation, we want to highlight the engagement of the learner, how deeply they create new understanding. We want to look at the prepare for success in college and career, working together toward a common goal of others and self, and them looking at becoming responsible citizens. Our vision for student success is around passage, preparing all students for success in a global economy. The grade spans that we will discuss this evening are grade spans pre-K through 4, grade spans 5 through 6, which we will term as intermediate, grades 7 through 8 as the middle, and our high school grades 9 through 12. Starting with Dr. Seuss, the more you read, the more things you'll know, the more that you learn, the more places you'll go. As we think about the educational journey of our elementary student. Elementary education is an exciting period for parents and for students. Children normally enroll in elementary schools at age 5 and 6. The rapid changes in cognitive, social, and moral growth of an elementary student makes the elementary classroom an ideal setting for shaping individual attitudes and behaviors. Technological advances and improved knowledge about how children learn are being infused into the curriculum and instructional practices in our schools. We will begin discussing pre-K to 4.
What we began to do is recognize that it is far easier to prevent than it is to rectify. We believe if we're able to get students into our schools at an earlier age and help them understand the physical well-being, motor development, social-emotional development, cognitive skills, language and literacy, and approaches to learning, they become a part of the Tiger Nation much earlier. We currently offer pre-K in 3 of our buildings, but we would like to offer pre-K in all of our elementary schools, recognizing that the earlier we get students into our building, the more opportunity we have to build on their literacy skills, cognitive skills, social-emotional, and get them prepared for what they'll be required to do in kindergarten. The expectations for a student in 1st grade now have changed dramatically and tremendously. Not only should students understand vowel sounds, consonant sounds, all of the above, and letter recognition, the expectations are they'll be able to read. The earlier we're able to get students into our building, the more we have a chance to get them ready for Tiger Nation and become a part of Tiger Nation and get a chance to see what we have to offer in our elementary buildings. We recognize that this is one of the goals by going to pre-K through 4 that we will be able to establish with the current or with the recommendations for our configurations.
All 3 of our sites are currently accredited by the National Association for the Education of Young Children. This group is a leader in research, policy, and best practices in early childhood. This fall, we received 5-star accreditation by the State Step Up to Quality programming, and next fall we will be going for our recognition at Oxford Elementary School. The program at Garrity Elementary offers integrated half-day and full-day programming, which meets the needs of both children that are typically developing and children that have special needs. At Oxford and Noble, we're offering full-day programming for 4-year-old children.
The opportunity for every school to have a preschool program will help us build a stronger foundation for learning as students gain communication skills, expand their vocabularies, participate in conversations, and take turns. Our students learn to reach out for help when they need it, and preschool children are encouraged to wonder about that which they are curious. Using the Get Set for School curriculum, students learn how to recognize rhyming words, hold a book, and listen to a story, which are all important literacy skills that preschool students learn. Children have experience with technology in a variety of capacities. Students explore math and literacy games that align with the early learning standards.
Thank you. Most exciting, I think, we have an opportunity to engage students in becoming a part of Tiger Nation from the second they enter preschool. And we enter into new areas that we have not been a part of in terms of the neighborhood and creating neighborhood pre-K environments and having them join the culture of our schools as they enter school for the first time. Creating this kind of environment is very consistent and is part of our strategic goals around a safe and supportive environment for our students. It gives us an opportunity to teach developmentally appropriate social skills beginning in preschool into kindergarten. It aligns with our efforts around PBIS and establishing a school culture. And I think most importantly, it gives us the opportunity to create the type of learning environment that allows students to grow in a social emotional way, also provides that early intervention, which we know makes a difference for our students. And when you look at our overall discipline patterns and you look at our behavioral data, you see that the pre-K through 4 would be a very nurturing and safe environment, and we would be able to develop our programs consistent with those students' needs. And they're part of Tiger Nation from the second they enter school.
This is the video that was produced this year to introduce the community to our preschool programming at all of our elementary schools. You'll see interviews from both teachers and families that are part of our program, and some video of the children interacting with curriculum materials, playing together, and developing social emotional skills.
This is a preschool environment, and I want it to be a good transition from home to school, so we try to make it as welcoming, as comforting, as close to what home might be as possible, so that they're comfortable. And the more comfortable they are, the more they're going to learn and want to be here.
When I drop them to school, I don't even get a kiss goodbye. It's like not a backward glance. So as far as I'm concerned, that's very encouraging, and very encouraging for the district to be able to get that from a child, that they're so happy to go to school.
So the integrated preschool program is unique in that it is like a typical preschool. We have general education students that are just typically developing kids, and then we also have kids within the program who have unique and special needs that are serviced through their individualized education plans. All of the kids learn that there's lots of different types of people and that each person is unique.
We have a smaller ratio. It's myself and an assistant that works in the classroom. So we're able to work closely with the children in small groups.
The teachers work really hard to develop a curriculum that addresses the needs of the whole child. So you'll see social emotional goals set for the kids. You'll see academic goals set for the kids. You'll see critical thinking and creative thinking encouraged in the classrooms. You'll also see children working on self-help skills. How do you let the teacher know when you need help? How do you use your words to solve a problem? So the teachers really try to address everything that the child will need, not only for kindergarten, but for the rest of their lives.
We use a social-emotional program called Conscious Discipline, and it involves a lot of connections. So they come in, they can get a high five or a hug, and we make it really warm, and then we work on I Love You rituals where they get to give hugs and sing songs, and it's all involved together so that they feel connected to our school environment and also create a community within our classroom.
My husband and I started to implement that in our home as well as seeing it in the school district, and I think it's a wonderful and a positive way to reprimand and redirect the children because it's teaching them why they can't do something versus just telling them no.
What we liked about it was the teachers really individualized the curriculum, so certain areas he was ahead of other kids and then they'd stretch him in those areas. Certain areas he needed to catch up, and they would take some extra time with those areas. The biggest takeaway was he was ready to go for kindergarten this year.
They've done really well. They are meeting all different friends from all different walks of life, and I think the diversity aspect is just phenomenal.
Because Arlo had such a great experience, we want to see Levon, our youngest son, have the same great experience in preschool and be ready for kindergarten, and we know he can be here.
We've remained committed to the district because we see the growth. We see that the district recognizes the challenges that are in place and they're definitely growing. We definitely see the growth in the district and we believe in the district.
As a Cleveland Heights University High student exits 4th grade, they have moved from learning to read to reading to learn. They can write about how individuals have made an impact on history and science. They have learned to multiply, divide, and use fractions using math expressions, our math series. And they can use scientific inquiry to understand the science of the natural world around them using Science Fusion, our newly adopted science curriculum, hopefully.
In this pre-K4 configuration, students are supported with meeting the 3rd grade reading guarantee. Using Super Kids and ReadyGen programs, by 4th grade, students can read and understand informational and literary texts. With the support of our social emotional learning program, students can acknowledge their actions and emotions. They can also identify personal strengths and weaknesses, as well as set and persevere to reach goals. As pictured, 4th graders can collaborate and use technology tools to support and extend their learning.
We will now move into our intermediate school configuration. The whole purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows. Here students begin to look at not just themselves, but start to look at how they interact with the peers that are around them. We all know that 5th and 6th grades are wonderful years of transition and transformation for students. So we want to take a look at how we can help students ease through that time of transition and grow academically as well as physically.
The core areas for grades 5 through 6 build on the experiences and what students have mastered from the pre-K to 4 program. In grades 5 through 6, we know they are becoming tweens, so they need help on focusing on making healthy choices, applying students' content knowledge, and reading in the areas of all subjects. Approaches to learning in grades 5 through 6 include taking initiative and exploring student curiosity. Students will learn and practice strategies that increase their persistence, their attentiveness, precision to detail, and collaboration. Students explore and develop their interest in careers, music, dance, art, drama, and athletics, in school and in enrichment opportunities.
One major benefit of the 5-6 configuration is that all district students come together in 5th grade and will continue as a cohort through high school graduation. This configuration will allow students to make lifelong supportive relationships focused on developing the academic, social, emotional, and physical well-being of all students.
The 5-6 configuration supports students as they explore rigorous informational and literary texts, as well as academic concepts that are challenging in both science, math, English, social studies. In grades 5 and 6, students continue their personal development through studying the fine arts, learning world languages, being exposed to physical education courses, and of course, making sure that they have 21st century skills like collaboration and organization that are taught through our AVID program. The focus on the IB learner profile encourages students to demonstrate an understanding of the world, themselves, and the community around them.
And now we come to our middle school years, our very exciting years, where education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. The middle school was established to act as a transition, moving the student away from the world of childhood and introducing social skills and mastery of knowledge and techniques that will further develop them for the high school experience that we have shared with the end in mind, looking at our graduate profile. As we begin to look at students in grades 7 and 8, we look at their physical well-being and them making healthy choices. We start to look at the transition of adolescence and them developing a sense of who they are and how they belong. An application on literacy, which is extended from our pre-K through 4, which looks at just the general and cognitive knowledge, and in 5 and 6 looking at the application of it. And then we start to look at the approaches to learning and then moving into an exploration of college and careers.
The 8th grade cohort has the opportunity to build on their experiences in intermediate school. As IB learners transitioning into adolescence, students learn about themselves and others, becoming more aware of their roles and responsibilities as global citizens. Students continue to read, to learn, and write to share knowledge, and now can present opinions and argue different perspectives based on evidence. Students use scientific inquiry to study the natural world and historical thinking to investigate early world and American history. Students also have access to high school level courses. They use technology to research and demonstrate their learning, and students represent Tiger Nation in athletic events and extracurricular activities such as Junior Model UN.
Along with all that, students are going to have an opportunity to begin to explore some careers and to formalize that exploration. They started at elementary school, and they're going to build all of this within that IB structure. And the beauty of that is again, it's about exploration and getting to learn what the career clusters are all about and what future rewards that could hold. Additionally, parents and students will have an opportunity to begin to build their career success plans and their student success plans through an application that looks at their career inventory called Naviance. We already used the high school, pushed all the way down to the middle school.
We want students to be excited about their preparation for high school with the possibility of taking those high school courses in middle school. We also want to foster their creativity at this critical age and support their needs through focused social-emotional curriculum that is specifically geared towards early adolescence.
The goal of the 7-8 configuration is to develop a student who is well prepared to enter into the high school and be academically successful. The 7-8 configuration would lend itself to some unique instructional models for teachers to adhere to. One of the things that they would be able to do with the 7-8 is to have grade level teaming and vertical teaming at the same time. It is quite possible in a 7-8 configuration for this to be done simultaneously. This would allow students' work to be analyzed, a high level of collaboration among the teachers so that they can intervene and propel kids to where they need to be. The instructional model would lend itself where English, math, social studies, and science teachers could look at student learning objectives and outcomes to close achievement gaps and accelerate student learning. And at middle school, we know that students may need an extra amount of support. This is a turbulent time for them as they are figuring out who they are and where they fit into society. We would offer looping. Looping is when the 7th grade student would have the same teacher for the 8th grade experience. And this builds strong student and family bonds and relationships as they really know their students. They know their strengths, they know their weaknesses, they know how to motivate that student to go where they need to go. And for the student, it's very important because this is a turbulent time where I need the extra support. I need someone who really knows me and knows how to motivate me. So as we look at this model, we understand that teachers will be at an advantage in this model with looping because they will really know their students. The first day that they enter the classroom, they will already have a rapport with the family and students. So the first day that they enter in the 8th grade, instruction, effective instruction begins because of that bridge that has been built. So the classroom management issues that teachers usually deal with, they go away. And so we get down to the brass tacks of learning and instruction and building our students so they are academically sound and prepared to be successful in the high school realm.
So as we begin our conversation looking at the graduate profile, now we are here at the Heights High graduate. We started with the end in mind and worked our way backwards. And now that we look at the Heights High graduate, here is what we expect for them to do. And as we began, we started thinking deeply and finishing what you start in order to create a new understanding. Here, students have the opportunity to direct their own learning. They ask questions and research new ideas. They express themselves through creative outlets, as well as looking and prepare for success in college and career, working toward a common goal for others and self. They create original solutions and make connections to solve problems, exchange information effectively in multiple formats, reflect, accept, and grow from accomplishments and setbacks. They then become responsible citizens, making a difference in the community and world around them, applying the knowledge of their own and others' cultural heritage to engage in a diverse world. They volunteer to be service of others, build a healthy mind and body, and they become engaged learners in whatever they decide to pursue beyond Heights High.
Thank you, Ed Services. So we know, we've heard Ed Services team talk about what the journey will look like pre-K through 12 and what every student will be able to master at the end of those grade spans. I also would like for us to kind of go back and look at our student enrollment. And as of today, we're at 5,018 students, and this is what the enrollment looks like at each grade level. So we do see where we have some spikes in 5th grade and 8th grade, but the other grades are relatively around 300 students. Pre-K, we have 6-day students, but we know we're investing in our pre-K, so we will see those numbers increase as we increase. The goal is to have a pre-K at every elementary school. The next slide, please, Felicia. So our district enrollment trend, so we went back to 1986, 87. I think, Eric, we did that because it's when you graduated from high school.
Thank you so much for that.
So, and if you look at when the facilities plan started, we started looking at this in 06 is what our notes shared. The number of students that we had that time was between 6,000 and 6,500 students. But then when the master facilities plan was approved in 12-13, we were right above 5,500 students. Our current year, just shared with you that we were at about 5,018. And then our transition year in 19-20, when this plan will take effect, we will be under 5,000 students at that time. And we know that's not because of anything negative we're doing. Families are not moving to Cuyahoga counties. In the state of Columbus, right now, the majority of families are moving to, state of Ohio rather, the families are moving to the Columbus area. That's the area in the state that we see a lot of the growth. Next slide, please. So our building capacity. So look at now, here's our elementary schools. The total square footage we have available is 447,000 plus. At each grade level, of our current grade level and our current enrollment, you see our capacity. So we will have the capacity to move our pre-K students into our elementary schools and still have a percentage of capacity. So as we see our enrollment take a downward trend, we still have capacity in our 7 elementary schools. Our next slide, please. Now our high school. So our high school, our new high school, we're really excited about that. It's 362,000 square feet. Current enrollment 1442. The building has capacity for 2,100 students. So we see the building use will be at 66% capacity. And we have that for all our buildings. We get Delisle, Monticello, Roxborough. Monticello currently is 561 students. Roxborough Middle School, 619 students. Planning capacity, again, current buildings have capacity for 806 students at Monticello, 780 at Roxborough. So we still have room. Okay, so current utilization, we put this here so you can see that we still have how we're utilizing our buildings at each level, total capacity of our current capacity and current utilization. So again, we see that as our student enrollment dwindles, we still have room for more students, but even capturing more students who have left the district and our efforts to recruit, we still have room for those students to come back to the district into our schools under this configuration. So what we would like for the board what I would like for the board to give me and our team to go ahead to pursue and change the master facilities plan and move from 268 buildings to 156 and 178 buildings. We recognize there will be some other things that we need to bring forward to the board. We understand that there will be a need for community and other input on some next steps. We recognize that, and we believe, and I believe, that this is the best thing for us to do for our community and our students. Again, looking at enrollment, looking at sustainability, using our resources effectively and efficiently, and knowing that in this configuration that we can offer unlimited opportunities for our students, and our buildings will become all IB buildings. I mean, currently we have plans to phase in IB in some schools. Our 5-6 school would be middle years program building as well as our 7-8 building. And we will be looking towards a diploma program, IB diploma program for our high school students. So it really aligns that IB curriculum for our students as well. We will still infuse STEM through our schools as well. We will maximize our opportunities for teachers to work together. That will strengthen those opportunities for our teachers. But education and focus, this is the right decision that we believe, that I believe that we should move towards, knowing there are other information that the board and questions that the board may have about some other aspects of the facilities, that we know that we would need to come back and bring that information to the board for further discussion and input. Right now, our recommendation is for the educational design to move forward in this fashion. So we can open it up for questions or discussion at this time?
Sure.
Okay, and you have in front of you again, just in case you didn't have the nameplates, there's pictures of those that sit in front of you, so you have any questions.
Anybody want to open up? Sure, why not?
I got lots of questions.
Well, wait a minute.
What?
We're not gonna take time out to get all your questions in. Let's kind of have a discussion back and forth a little bit.
I can't ask questions?
Yeah, you can, but you say it like we got to be here till next week.
Oh, I don't want to be here till next week.
But, okay, but I'm just saying, let us get in the conversation with you.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just asking questions. My first question is, I'm looking for, having spent a lot of time, I know Jim did as well, on the Lay Facilities Committee, and what I'm looking for is clarity on the data on the district building capacity, because I'm curious as to how you came to, the staff, the building capacity models. How were these numbers derived? And there's a reason why I'm asking that, knowing how OSFC calculated their square footage models. I'm curious to see how these were derived.
Okay, Brad.
Common factor is going to be the common factor is going to be the OSFC models, because that's what we are basing them off. Now, there's two different formulas you can use. One, the older one is the 120 and 140 for pre-K, for K through 6, and then 7 through 8. The newer model is 115 square feet for pre-K through 5, and then 6, 7, and 8 is 145, and then 165 for high school. And so the latter is the format I used for that. So for example, you look at a building that was at one time an elementary school building, like the Taylor Road School Delisle Option Center. That was calculated using the high school square footage because it's being utilized by high school, so it wasn't calculated as an elementary space. Things that were excluded from those calculations were non-instructional spaces. For example, auditoriums, which are not present in every one of our buildings. And gymnasiums are calculated, but at a percentage.
Okay, the reason I ask is because so we don't do, okay, how many classrooms do we have and what's our maximum ideal enrollment? We don't use that as a methodology. The reason I ask that is because the OSFC data, one of the challenges we had, at least with the first iterations back in 2012, was that they were counting, well, at Oxford and Canterbury, they were counting the attic spaces, which were unusable, and at Fairfax, they had a utilization that had like 750 kids, which was very, very high. So that's why I wanted to make sure that we were using a much more realistic number.
Correct.
Okay.
Both of those actually did factor in, as far as total number of classrooms available, square footage for instructional space.
Okay. Can I ask another question? Or do you
Sure.
want to
Well, yeah, this is great. That only took a couple of minutes.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. My next question in regard to sort of a generalized one is I guess the thrust of this would be moving the 5th grade to a 5th, 6th building, basically the upper and lower model, which the Lay Facilities Committee, the Buildings Committee of the Lay Facilities Committee had in the back of its mind. So this is basically going to an upper and lower model.
Correct.
Okay. Then my question, a question I would pose in that regard would be, when I look at the building utilization model and the enrollment, that would put us over capacity at Roxborough and butting up against it at Monticello, because you're taking 400 some kids and putting them in the two buildings. The question I would pose is, what are the implications in regard to physical plant, transportation, things like that?
So we'll come back on the transportation, because we're really focusing again on the educational design. However, the building capacities, the capacity in 5, 6, 7, 8, we have room for students in Monticello, Roxborough, there's 5 students off. So with our numbers, if we moved in 2019, we have the capacity for either school for the number of students that we will have at that time.
Okay. I mean, my concern, as much as I've been wanting to go to an upper and lower model, that was when we had more money to utilize without our budgetary parameters. My concern, as much as I like the idea, is owing to our the financial constraints, the impact that would have on the physical plan. Because before I was like, okay, we could add on more classrooms, because theoretically now we don't have that option.
Right. To that point, we looked at to see if we move into this configuration where we have to renovate larger spaces and build new, we won't. We have the space based on the enrollment projections for that time. And we will come back to the board with a more extensive study on what that means for the facilities, all of those questions regarding facilities. We recognize that we need to do more in-depth study on that and have some more community input as well, as you did when you did the initial master facilities plan. So we didn't want to do that independent of a process that will answer a lot of those questions and give us the time to do the in-depth homework and research we would need to do for that particular piece of the project.
Can I ask another question? Or is it
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay.
I want to jump in.
Go ahead.
There was, Danielle, I think, there was a couple of questions I think I have for you. The first one has to do with, you had a comment on there about early learning and developmental standards. And I wondered, are those NACE standards or state standards? Whose standards?
The state standards are
The state standards?
standards that we follow.
NACE standards exceed the state standards though, don't they?
They are not academic standards.
Mhm.
They set the
So
tone.
these are academic standards?
Yes, the
Okay.
early learning and development standards are academic standards. They also cover social emotional skills, physical skills, fine motor development. They're all encompassing.
Okay. I had one other question. It's probably, well, it's 2 questions. One is kind of general about the whole recommendation, and that has to do with, I didn't hear any reference to any child development research or anything like that, and I'm always curious about, how we talk about students and their well-being and adjustment and all that, and where the research is in terms, in other words, I was looking to what the research tells us about the kind of configuration that we would recommend. And I didn't hear anything.
Well, and part of that is, Ron, when we went back and looked at the recommendation you had before, the recommendation was because there were so many different recommendations for so many different configurations, even at that time, there was no consensus around some of that. So that's why the committee decided to keep a 6-8 same configuration based on research. So I didn't think that we needed to go in that pathway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we believe that we're going to address that by addressing high-quality pre-K programs. We bring in our students in earlier. We're going to make sure that we have those programs that are going to address their academics and play, because there's a lot of research that states that we need to focus on early education. And I believe that this configuration would give us the opportunity to have more of a strategic focus on it, and with some other layerings that we need to do as well. But we would get that research for you.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I would look to, I guess my idea would be to look to see where the research is that would support a recommendation. And related to that, different question. We talked about the scientific inquiry, And I was wondering, at what point do we teach? See, I guess I was really bad because my temptation was to get into, I guess, what you guys would call curriculum or whatever. But at what point do we introduce our students to scientific method?
So the children at Garrity Elementary School get time in both the science lab and the makerspace with the instructional specialists. The teachers and all of the programming spend a lot of time teaching children how to ask questions, how to develop those inquiry-based skills, how do they explore the world around them, how do they gain information. And they're doing this all while covering the content standards in developmentally appropriate ways. So they do plant seeds in the classroom and ask questions. They do make observations. They do all of these foundational skills so that when they continue with Cleveland Heights, they've already gained those basic skills and can build on them. So we do a lot of inquiry in the preschool classrooms.
Well, finally, on the K through 4, I'm really fascinated by the idea of what I guess being initiated into Tiger Nation, into this culture, which, you know, at a really important level, the Tiger Nation, the culture that we continue to try to build, I think, is really significant and really important. And when we start thinking about the kids coming, you know, the younger kids coming through, how do we do that? Is it the T-shirt? Is it the tiger running around and visiting the kids? How do we get the Tiger Nation going at that level?
Right. Well, it is about the T-shirt. That's important. I think, you know, the schools and the teachers and the administrations in the various buildings have been making a significant effort around Tiger Nation and the Tiger Pledge. And what we miss sometimes is if you're not part of our preschool program, you're coming into something new and different. And we see it as a real opportunity, working with Conscious Discipline, working with the discipline program at the preschool, to begin to build not necessarily the connection that you know, is anything more than just belonging and being a part of our culture and our schools. So, you know, you are promoting the fact that it's important to be part of this district and part of our environment. What does that mean? Well, when you think about the Tiger Pledge and you think about reinforcing those ideas and those expectations, that's what it means.
So
we celebrate it.
At that level, do we start introducing?
Absolutely. So there are things that occur in schools where there are celebrations each week, and there's recognition of those students and staff who've done great things. That includes preschool programs, right? There's the whole notion of the color, the whole notion of the connection that comes with being a part of something that's bigger than themselves. They're going to wear the T-shirts when they start out. You know, they're going to be a part of the Tiger Pledge. They're going to be reciting those things. And so it's not a reteaching that has to occur across the district in various elementary schools when kids enter kindergarten. They've already received it. They're already part of it. And making a purposeful effort to do that at an early intervention stage for them is critical. You were talking about developmental. This is so important to teach kids and to work with kids on who they are starting to become and what is expected of them, and for our staff to model that. And the opportunity to do that across the board in every elementary school through purposeful efforts such as using social emotional curriculum, celebrating Tiger Nation Fridays where everybody dresses up in the colors of black and gold, you know, recognizing kids' accomplishments.
So when we do Tiger Nation, we do it district-wide?
We do it district-wide. Now, we've given some autonomy to schools to do it a little differently in each school based on what their school needs, right? I will be very honest with you and tell you that we're at a point with the Tiger Pledge where I'm concerned that it's becoming background noise, so we have to do some we have to reinvigorate and think about other ways in which we engage that. Our staff has been doing a tremendous job of reinforcing that, but we need to really help them and think of ways that we keep that alive all of us are part of scenarios where you hear something over and over again, and eventually you might start to tune it out. And I think we're at a point in the number of years that we've been doing it where we need to think about other ways to reinvigorate that. And we have tremendous examples across our schools.
And it seems to me that there's ways to do it. I mean,
Absolutely.
Tuesday, I thought I was from Chicago or somewhere, because I didn't have on any Indians gear. You know, so I'm saying.
Right. Right.
So, you know, I just wondered, you know, what does it feel like? Here I am, second grader. What does it feel like to be Tiger Nation?
Right. You know, the example was given the other day, and I'll share a little bit. In Massillon, they give out that tiger, right, when every child is born, right? So the football, right? So, you know, I think we're at a stage where an opportunity like this, at the point we are in the competitive world we are of education, that we've got to think along those lines. And we've got to be selling ourselves in terms of what our district has to offer, which is just exceptional. And being able to begin that process at pre-K in each elementary is a very exciting proposition, from that standpoint, from the culture climate standpoint.
I have a question regarding the 7th and 8th. I love the looping. I think that concept is excellent. But the 7th and 8th with Monticello and Roxborough, so would there be 2 7-8 programs, Roxborough and Monticello, or just it'll be combined?
One school.
One school, okay.
With all the 7th and 8th graders in one school, all the 5th and 6th graders in another school.
Okay, all right.
I think it needs to be said, the Tiger Nation, I mean, a lot of people think, you know, why are you, it's a gimmick. It's not. I mean, I think the community needs to understand it's our way of setting expectations, and it works. And it's really, it's novel. Other districts do this kind of thing. And, I mean, so it's a great thing. I've got a lot of questions, thoughts. Okay, so.
Your turn.
Is it my turn? Thank you. I'm gonna ask one more question than Eric, so I think I'm gonna win.
I don't know if you will.
Okay, so, so this is sort of my takeaway right now. I think it's a best practice in an organization to rethink how it delivers its services. So I commend you guys in going through this and thinking through it. I mean, there's just a whole ton of unanswered questions. And I respect the fact that some of this has to evolve. But as a former parent, a newly former parent of a child, there's a lot of parents that are going to catch wind of this. There's going to be a lot of misunderstanding immediately. There's people that are going to think you're closing schools, and they're immediately going to come to the conclusion they're closing my school, which is not happening right now. Right. So is there an assurance? Well, first of all, I don't think there is a plan right now to close any schools. Is that?
That is correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
So I think
Closing those schools would be something that would be in your hands.
Well, I think it's in. I think it's in our hands, and I think better in the community.
I'm saying in our.
Right. You know, we're saying that we know that the current plan says 268, and we're saying, let's look at 156 and 178. So we know that 2 buildings are slated to be either or, which is saying let's completely change the configuration. Now, we know by changing the configuration that it will move 5th graders out of our elementary schools, but we haven't had any conversation with what that means for it. That's a process that has to happen with others in the community, just like it happened when the community worked on this master facilities plan. It's not us saying eeny, meeny, miny, mo. It is a process, and we will honor and respect that process to get to an answer on which schools, et cetera.
Well, just knowing how, you know, I sat in the lay facilities committee, and we spent a third of the time talking about grade level configurations. Mm-hmm. It was a very nuclear, very hot topic. There was, I would say religious wars could have been started because of the conversation. I mean, people feel very strongly about this configuration that we have right now, or the intermediate
proposal,
the proposal. So there's just a a huge amount of communication, understanding, that's going to have to go through this, you know, as if we choose to sort of move forward, considering it. Because I think it needs to be understood, no decision's being made right now. This is something that you're exploring. I'm a little worried that the amount of time it's taking to explore this is taking us away from other key goals. But I'm not sure that that's something that could be really effectively answered.
Right. So I want to be clear, I am asking the board that we move forward with changing the configuration. I'm not asking the board to consider what buildings, that's not what I'm requesting. But I am asking that we move forward with changing the configuration. Instead of doing 2 6-8 buildings, we do 1 5-6 and 1 7-8. So it doesn't necessarily require any board action, but I would like your blessing that we move in this fashion.
Tonight?
Or after Easter? Monday? I think it's soon, because other things will be impacted. I mean, I don't want to be facetious, but I mean, there are other decisions that will be impacted because we will need to, we make some other decisions and some other work would need to be done because it impacts what's currently on some decisions that need to be made regarding the 2 6-8s that we know. Now, we know we have time. We are focused on the high school buildings. We know that we have some architects who are working on designs for 2 6-8 buildings. So the sooner we make a recommendation or decision, we would need to have those architects then begin to modify their current designs for 5, 6, 7, 8. Then while they're doing that, then there need to be some decisions made about which building, what facilities we use. I mean, that comes next, because we are not saying that A or B. We're saying that we believe this is the best educational approach to move.
Okay, so, just sort of reliving conversations that have sort of happened years ago, just sort of, but just sort of thinking through things. Okay, so, let's maybe focus on preschool. There's already a plan to try to put preschools in all the buildings. And I think I'm not sure I'm not sure how that impacts this particular decision. Because we still have the capacity to put pre-K in the existing elementary schools.
No, we don't. So we don't have the capacity to put preschools in every elementary school currently, and we do have some site challenges as well with 2 of our elementary schools, those open concept buildings. We've been told by our pre-K authorizations teams that we cannot use those facilities for a pre-K. They have different standards. We found some very rigorous standards. And those open concept buildings will really need to be reconfigured in a different way. So we have challenges for Boulevard and Fairfax. We have no room in Canterbury for a pre-K. There may be some space at Rocks, but we do have some challenges. So moving the 5th graders out will allow more flexibility in that space for the stringent requirements that we have for our pre-K units.
Well, I'd really like as much information as you
yes.
can about that, because that would sort of be a critical issue on, at least for me,
Yes.
to move forward
Okay.
with this kind of decision.
Okay.
Doing pre-K is great for the district.
Yes.
Great for the community.
Yes.
So any way that we can support that.
Okay.
Obviously within reason, okay?
Right. Because
but-
it is a district, and I have to say this part, it is a district investment. We don't get funding for pre-K students. It is our district investment, so we're using our dollars in order to invest in our students early. There's some grant funds that Danielle and her team and Sue, we're looking at to expand our programs But it is our investment to bring our students in early, to give them better opportunities to learn early.
I can't find the slide.
Okay,
Oh,
which
no,
one?
there's one of your slides, the one with the bar graph where you actually show the district enrollment trends. I mean, just knowing how our enrollment has declined, I would be shocked.
Okay.
There, back, okay, one more.
One more.
Actually, one more, the one that you just passed it. One more
There you
forward,
go.
that one.
Mhm.
Just seeing where we were, and, I mean, we had essentially if you take Coventry out of the equation, okay? But when the facilities planning process took place in 06, 07, and looking where our current enrollment is right now, I'd be shocked that we can't fit pre-K in the existing elementaries that we have. So I guess this is where I'm looking for some factual information to try to get a better sense of.
Right.
And
Right.
I get the fact that the footprint buildings may not be able to support it. I mean, whatever information you can give us, I'd like to learn more about that. When it actually comes to what you've painted this picture of what we could be doing in the with a 5, 6, and a 7, 8. I mean, things like looping, for example. I mean, we could be doing that right now. I mean, that's not really a changing the building configuration. I mean, it does give us the ability of having this cohort, as it was mentioned.
Yes.
I think that's very helpful.
Right.
And it helps us follow our equity pledge. But I'd like to know, based on facilities, bricks and mortar,
Right.
why can't we do these things that are projected in here with the existing buildings that we have?
You can't just, when you look at our enrollment in existing buildings, we're going to have potentially we will have 2 6-8 buildings with 500 students in each. So our buildings, in those numbers will continue. We look at our trends. I mean, look at 26, 27. We were projected to have under 4,500 students. So just know that those facilities are going to have small populations as we continue to look forward. So, yeah, you can still have 2 6-8 buildings if we're just talking about capacity, but you would have very small enrollment. So when you think about resources, and we look at our strategic plan goal 5, and we talked about we're going to maximize our resource and be very responsible for our resources, we could potentially look at exceeding the cost of maintaining 2 facilities when we could save dollars by combining those students in different grade spans. So that is a decision that we'll need to look at and make. And I mean, there were some considerations that were made even in the 2013 plan that we would need to go back and look at and get some more information for you too.
Well, I mean, the dollars and cents, I think goes without question. I mean, I think we all would we need to have that information before we could, or at least some estimates of how it's going to be. But I think one of the biggest showstoppers the Lay Facilities Committee had was we looked at this thing on what we thought was best for students, and keep in mind, we worked with administration, we worked with parents, we worked with community members. When you have essentially, 4 sets of buildings, a child would transfer from 3 that we have an additional transition.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of fear in the community by having an additional transition.
Yeah.
I would like to know what can be. I mean, not now, obviously, but
Right.
I mean, I need more information to get comfortable with. More transitions have always been ingrained in my head from other folks from this district as being bad. Now we're being told it's okay because maybe there's other things that sort of make that better. Also the issue is once you start understanding a child as a principal or a person in the building, it may take a good year before you sort of understand that child. Then they're only there 1 year. Then they get moved to a whole nother building where the staff in that whole building has to understand the issues with that child. Again, it's part of this whole transitional fear.
I agree with I agree with my colleague on some of his points, and I disagree on a couple other ones. In regard to the LFC, no, I was going to talk.
He put a bunch of stuff on the table. Are you gonna go point by point with
No,
him?
there's just one point.
Okay.
No, my take in regard to the LFC and the recommendation on grade configuration.
Yeah.
Thank you. Lay facility. I thought it had already been explained, but thank you. The Lay Facilities Committee, the rationale to a high degree for maintaining the current configuration wasn't a fondness for it or a fear of transitions. It really was a matter of, I hate to say it, punting configuration, that lay people shouldn't be making a recommendation on grades. That should be an administration and board decision, and sort of keep it the way it is. If anything, as a way to say we don't like Fielding Nair's PK8 campus idea, K8, their K8 idea, it was more just hold the line for further discussion.
Right.
So that I would disagree.
Right. And also, I just want to make sure that, the information we use is the plan that we had. So, and the plan that we had, if we go back and look at some of the pages, it really outlines how the decision was made about the configurations. And they said they outlined a concern, but none of the concerns that you just described are outlined in the report that we were using. So it even states that they surveyed the teachers and they showed a wide range of preferred configurations, but no consensus around any particular configuration. There was concern about having fourth graders and eighth graders in the same building because they were talking about that time maybe doing a pre-K 3 and a grade 4-8. In the absence of compelling research showing the advantage of revised configuration, the committee concluded that keeping the current configuration would eliminate the potentially distracting and divisive debate over the merits of the change. So the committee concluded that building designs with future flexibility in mind could accommodate a change in grade configuration in the future should such a change be needed. So that is outlined on page 22 of why that particular grade configuration. So this is the research, this is the context that we were using to go back and look at it. So I don't know if what you stated, you were there, so you know, but we did not use any of that information to base our decision on.
I would just say it's 5 years later too.
Correct.
So, I don't know exactly how Jim thinks about his participation in that and those recommendations or whatever, but it could be reflecting new knowledge too. His
Correct.
comments.
Yes.
But
Agreed.
before we move much further, and I know there are a lot of questions still there, and I just want some clarification on the point that Jim brought up, and that had to do with looping. It's my understanding that we may have been looping for some period of time in other grades. And so looping has been something that maybe we have practiced in this district at various times for various reasons. I don't think that here we say suddenly we'll loop, but haven't we used looping in different grades and different places?
I believe when I worked at Roxborough Elementary, this is probably 13 years ago, they were practicing looping then.
But the power of the looping that I'm talking about is being in an environment where you only have 2 grades. So the collaboration, ability for the teachers to collaborate and really know their students, we've never felt that before because it's only 2 grades. We can even look at, right now, if teachers want to do vertical teaming, they have to do it after hours, after the instructional day is complete to do that. This could be embedded actually into their day. So when you schedule their planning time, you can schedule it where the 2 grade levels are off for English, for math, for social studies and science. And so they can actually sit down and do in-depth work that they can do during their instructional day.
Yeah, I don't, what I would say is the jury is out. I think that looping has been something that we've experimented with at various times. I think in theory, it's right on. But in practice, I'm not sure. I'm just me saying, I'm not sure. But it makes sense, I mean, in theory. But I don't know that we've ever, does anybody out there know if we've ever had enough enough of an experience with it that we can say definitive that looping is this magic portion related to 7th and 8th graders? Or does it work for 3rd and 4th graders?
May I, Allison?
Somebody.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to say, having served.
Come to the mic.
I was just going to say, having served as an administrator and been a member of the district for almost 20 years, it hasn't been implemented consistently across buildings. It has been, and so I, as the director of data research and assessment, I wouldn't even be able to do a statistical report for you to say during these years it was implemented in these grades here in Cleveland Heights and in these buildings. So yes is the answer to the question. We have looped in the district. However, it hasn't been done in a consistent manner, and I would say for a long enough period for us to conclude here that it was significantly beneficial to our students. That's not to say that it wouldn't be, but we just haven't implemented it here long enough in a consistent enough manner to say that definitively.
And conceptually, I don't want us to throw things around like that unless we're also saying that we should make some investment in it. And even if that means that we're going to make the kind of investment that would give us the data that we need to support it. You know, I'd like to say 5 years from now, if we say looping is a good way to go, we have something to support us having said that. And there was, is it okay with you if I?
Yeah.
Okay. The reason that was significant for me is because we talked about looping, and like I say, I kind of had some memories because I had a couple of students or so that came through our system, and they experienced some of this. But it was kind of an interesting piece for me because we talked about pre-K in terms of safety and supportive environment, and then we get to the 8th grade, we talked about looping and extra support, and we talked about 5 and 6 in terms of transition and transformation. And it seems to me that all of this points to where we are as far as our staff is concerned and what our staff is doing to support these children as they go through whatever number of transitions. So it points to me, what does the professional development look like as we think about the kinds of support that our students are going to need throughout. So anyway, that's the only point of me bringing up the looping thing, because I don't know that everybody knows how to do it well. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's something you just say we're doing it and then all of a sudden, So, and I think throughout, we heard the whole notion of support and people are going through transition. And I don't know that people, just because they're in a grade like 9th and through 12th graders go through transitions too in the same building. A 9th grader is not a senior. I mean, they're just not, So anyway,
Thank you.
Enough.
Sure.
Okay, come on.
So I'm gonna do what I always do. I'm gonna deny the premise of why I'm here for this particular meeting for just a minute. First, I want to thank all 16 of you for being here and everyone behind them. And it's nice to hear a unified voice of the Ed Services Department. Thank you very much. Mr. Swaggart, you should not have grown a beard if you're going to put a non-bearded picture on your thing. We can fix that.
Yeah.
Done. I want to say that I really like, I know the point of this is to talk about the configuration that Dr. Dixon has proposed, that all of you have proposed. I want to start from it. I like the notion that you started with an outcome-oriented approach. So your outcome, as I understood it, was what do we want someone graduating from our system to look like? And I'm sure there's more than one outcome. There's not one single outcome of that. But so then work backward. I think that's really a really good approach. I think also
what that leads to for me personally, and I think I heard numerous times, even though you sort of went to what I'm going to call a latitudinal approach, I like the longitudinal approach. I like the notion of if you want to get to here, what do you have to do here, and how's that going to be affected in each level? Because I think that's something, if I can be tremendously candid, we haven't always succeeded at. I think oftentimes what you'll hear at any given level is, well, the students I have aren't prepared for what I want to, where I want them to be so that I can get them to that next level. So I think if you look longitudinally, I think that's a very good thing. But I think the one thing I didn't hear quite as much of, I did hear some talk about it, was the support structures, that again, the longitudinal support structures. So I heard at each level, I heard maybe in some buildings, but I'm not necessarily hearing how we're shepherding people through, because I think in many respects we need some of that. So again, I mean, that may be in it. This is just a presentation. You can't possibly get to everything in one given presentation. But I think just trying to keep my, at least initial remarks, a little bit shorter. A couple things. One is, in terms of that support structure, remembering we're talking as if this cadre, this cohort of students are going all the way through our system, but we have external forces coming along the way too, and that's been one of our songs all along, is the number of transitions, the input-output, which I just did backwards, of students, and how are we supporting that, and how does this structure that you're proposing facilitate the best support of that? So now I'll get back on, my hamster was off the wheel for a while, it's getting back on again. So if the proposal is to go to this new structure, what about the structure facilitates the needs that we're trying to address? Or what about the structure supports the outcomes we're trying to get to? And why is this structure the best structure to use? I think Dr. Dixon said before, there's more than one structure that there's more than one educational model. The bottom line is you got to make it work, whichever one you choose. But why is this one well suited to? And Ms. Moore, I liked what you were talking about, because I think in some respects you addressed that. So what about the structure you started talking about? Well, it allows us to create schedules within that particular building, which would give the best possibilities for us to be able to maximize the effectiveness of the staff in that building. So I think that's something to focus on. Is that what one of the differences is? Is that if we break it off this way, then our staff in that building can actually be much more effective in achieving the outcomes. Jim is actually right, and it was actually the facility, it was actually the administration that said, actually said, we need to minimize transitions. And I think Dr. Johnson may be the only one here has been here long enough to say, maybe Mr. Pekak, but I don't know if you were involved in that, but that was a big deal. So we need to address that. It was, the more transitions you have, and let's face it, as parents, as people, I was on the PTA for years. Everyone, I'm going to leave them in for elementary, but oh my gosh, I'm not sending them to the middle school. And then I'm not sending them to it was always the fear of the next level. I think that can be addressed. I'm not actually so afraid of that, but at the same time, I agree with you, that needs to be answered. I think the other thing, I've said this a few times before, I think we always talk about the students and the supports for the students, and that is my number one focus, absolutely. But remember that if you don't also figure out a way to involve the families and figure out a way to help give them the same support structures you're giving your students, you might find you're not quite as effective. So I'm going to just close off at least these parts of my comments by just saying thank you again for giving some sort of unified approach. I think there's some things we need to know more, but I think the number one thing I want to know is, if you're going to say this is the structure, we need to know what are the things that makes this structure the best way to facilitate the outcome you're looking for. I didn't even ask. I just did.
Well, you can make a statement like Cal did. You don't have to ask a question.
No,
I hear you.
he gets to play the good cop. My question would be, actually, I have a question in regard to the enrollment chart. I don't know if it's one before or after this one. Not this one, not that one. That one. Okay, my question would be, and this is more, I'm looking for a frame of reference. Ninth grade is shown as 387. I remember in the 90s, we had a huge problem with ninth grade retaining kids would, they'd move through, they actually had almost social promotion. They get to the middle school, the high school, boom, they get stuck. We had a board retreat where we had enrollment data that showed the ninth grade was not huge, but substantially bigger than the other grades. My question would be, how did we sort of suddenly, there's no ninth grade enrollment problem? Did that suddenly go away? I guess I'm trying to figure out what happened. Because it used to be the ninth grade was the biggest grade because of that retaining issue. Or,
So you're saying what was happening to the
Yeah.
number of
Yeah.
ninth graders that matriculating to ninth grade?
Yeah, because
I mean,
they-
eighth graders is coming to ninth
yeah,
grade?
eighth graders get to the high school, boom, they get stuck, and
right.
that would spike up because they would be held back. My question is, this is the first time in 20 years I haven't seen that number. So that's why I'm trying to figure out why that suddenly is not a problem.
Well, this number is as of today, so I'm not sure if it started out with a larger, could have been 400 students in August for our ninth graders.
But still,
But-
400 is not out of whack.
It's not, yeah, but the number of eighth graders, I mean, our student enrollment is going down.
No, we would, basically, eighth graders would move to the high school.
Right.
And a number of those ninth graders wouldn't make it to the 10th grade.
Oh.
So every year, we had a ninth grade that was higher than any other, any other cohort. So I'm trying to.
There used to be a phenomena that kids got to the high school, and there were a lot of people that were held back in the ninth grade, so that the ninth grade population looked abnormally bigger than the others.
Two things, some students are ninth grade in credits, but they could be taking the 10th grade course, so we call them like tweeners,
Where do we place them on that chart?
So right now,
Those
they're true
tweeners.
ninth graders if they have ninth grade credits, is where you got those numbers correct. Yeah, those are the ninth graders that have ninth grade credits. And the 10th graders have 10th grade, enough credits to be 10th graders and so on. Brad?
You won't know that till the end of the year, so that bubble might shift over.
Okay, so theoretically, this is, okay, so in reality, the bubble, the spike may still exist, but on this chart, because we're mid-year, the
They're
spike
considered-
doesn't exist.
right.
Okay, that
They're
was.
current ninth graders.
Okay, that was my question on
Okay.
that, okay.
Well, maybe to clarify on the same topic, I mean, it's been known, at least it seems like, I get the fact that it seems to be in the past, we've had, it's taken 5 years for kids to get through, okay? And we have a higher percentage, I think, than a lot of other school districts, for a lot of, crazy reasons.
We have a
Mostly
higher
outside of
percentage
our
of graduating our kids in our 5-year cohort.
Yeah, so
Yes.
so I'd be kind of curious to see where they sort of fit into that. I mean, I assume that they're buried in the 9, 10, 11, and 12 numbers somehow. But I'd be sort of curious to see
Okay.
how that would break out.
Okay.
I think that answer your question.
Okay.
One of the things, I know it's been brought up this evening, you've got a copy of it right here, Dr. Dixon. The question I would pose, and that was an email, a question I posed to you, which you forwarded on to your team, it was in the Lay Facility Committee's report, you're welcome, was comparing, okay, obviously there's multiple ways to do grade configuration. The question, when the Lay Facilities Committee, or LFC, did their suggestion, they took a look at what were neighboring systems doing for grade configuration, what were similar large suburban, not gonna call them urban, suburban districts like a Euclid or Lakewood or Parma doing, and then what was the most similar MSAN districts, inner-ring, pre-war suburbs, what were they doing? So that
So-
was,
I have that for you.
okay.
So what we did, it was page 20 of the Lay Facilities Committee, so Ms. Gould and her team took that current report and we updated, because
Okay.
remember, we recognized that this was
Right.
5-year-old information, so we have updated that information, so we can,
So then, which then creates another question. The question I would pose is, Shaker was doing it, so on, the model that that's being proposed,
yeah, this is what's current, so
which is current?
that's current.
That's current,
Yeah.
okay. Then
This is the one that
This is
was
the old
in,
one.
this is the old one, yeah.
Okay.
This is the old one.
This is the old one.
then the question I would pose is,
Are we looking at the old one or the new one?
That's the
That's
new
the
one.
new
That's the
one.
new
That's the
one.
new one.
So
The
if we
old
pass
one is
them in
coming
that,
now.
yes, yeah, just put them side by side. My apologies, I didn't make enough
then
copies.
the question I would pose is, and again, keep in mind, I've been, the back of the whole rationale for where we're going, sort of the back concept was for this possibility. The question I'm posing is playing devil's advocate, particularly in regard to our budgetary parameters. We're now, the recommendation is to embark on a concept that very few of our comparable peers are utilizing. Are we ahead of the curve?
We're ahead of the curve.
Right, one, we're ahead of the curve, and two, we're making different decisions. I think each community make their decision based on their,
All right.
their community needs. So, I mean, I think it's good, I mean, just as and I have copies for everyone want to see, that the team did look at some comparables, and we updated that information, and we can share best practices too. I mean, a partnership with Shaker in this way, Shaker, for example, will allow us to allow our teachers to partner in very different ways. So some professional development, some other things could happen with some of our neighboring districts when we look at this, even with our MSAN team, so.
Now, this says Shaker has gone away from the upper and lower concept?
No.
Yeah, that's right here. They have 6 elementaries and they have 1 middle school that's 7/8.
It didn't break down the more,
Okay, yeah.
Oh, so they have,
So they have, yes.
they still have the
oh,
5,
yes.
6. Okay, that's why, I had a feeling, I was very surprised when I
No,
saw that. Okay.
no.
Okay, that's what I thought, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, okay.
my, as much as, I'm usually I view the board role as not an academics as you folks doing academics. My view as a role as a board member is budget, and basically as representatives of the people, it's a political element. So the question, that's why I keep going back to the costs of the cost of doing this, as well as, to a degree, the ripple effect, because as much as, I guess, are we saying, hey, the original plan that we filed with OSFC, which was to go to
Yeah.
1 high school, 2 middle schools, and 5 elementaries, which was the long-term plan, are we saying, hey, you know what? That plan that eventually had us closing 2 elementaries at an unknown date far off into the future, I'm saying that because there is no specific date for that. Are we saying, hey, that 5 elementary school model, we're taking that and putting it on the shelf, and we're not talking about that? Because my concern is if we're pulling 400 kids out of the elementary cohort, that definitely has an impact in regard to what the buildings would be downrange.
Right. I'm saying that there is a plan that exists that offlines 2 elementary schools. We know that. We
Right.
know at some point, 2 elementary schools will be offline. Until we get to that point, I'm recommending that the 7 elementary schools will become pre-K 4 schools,
Okay.
and 1 5, 6, and 1 7, 8 building. And we know we have to make some different decisions when that time comes, but there's some other things that have to happen too before phase 2 of the master facilities plan.
Well, I guess, but my issue would be then, if I'm playing.
And we have, and we have capacity that once those 2 buildings are offline, we still have capacity to move those students into
Well,
the remaining elementary schools.
My issue, again, I'm going back to, if right now if we're looking at our building capacity model, Brad's numbers, which are not OSFC, if I'm using those capacity numbers and I'm pulling 400 kids out of the elementary cohort, that would theoretically make the surplus capacity at the elementaries exacerbate that, and if we continue to have our trend line in regard to enrollment, that would actually have our buildings having a lower and lower capacity. So then my concern is, again, looking from a political dynamic, would be that it would theoretically, there's the potential that we would have to close an elementary building due to enrollment, regardless of what we do on the facilities project. So
That's correct.
This would seem to hasten that outcome at a quicker time.
Well, we don't have to do the projections on it tonight. I think we can all agree that there's additional information that we would need to, to gather
Yeah.
over the course of the next year, or let's say. But there's a period of time that the issue that we're faced with now is not that issue, And I think it's reasonable for us to think that we are gonna have that issue and that we have some time to deal with it.
Well, see, yes and no. My concern is that I'm extremely reticent to make a decision, I hate to say it, relatively quickly on that, which has a significant impact long-term and has an impact on the physical plan.
Say what that is.
Well, that if we're pulling 400 kids out of the elementary cohort, that's going to facilitate, that accelerates the decision-making process on the elementary building plan. And if we make a decision, we have to, unfortunately, going to an upper-lower model means that we have to make a decision in regard to physical plant sooner than later.
Yeah, and we have to make some assumptions. One of the assumptions that's being made right now, and I think we're being asked to move forward with it, is that to some extent, the 400 kids that we would be pulling out of elementary schools in the 5-6 model would be replaced by the pre-K students. That's part of the assumption that's built into this scenario.
But that's a big assumption, because right now I'm seeing 68 kids.
Yeah, but that's the capacity. We only have capacity for 68.
Well, that does bring up another question that I'll pose, is we're talking about capacity. I don't understand, I understand the footprint buildings have an issue because of that horrible design, but why would we not have capacity for pre-K at Canterbury and even Roxelle? Roxelle's a small building. How do we not have, if we're pulling, how do we not have room for that? You had asked, I think Jim had asked that. Why can't we put pre-K in Canterbury right now? That's a big building, and it's only at 74% capacity. I mean, preschool's what, one classroom, two?
Well, I think, yeah, it's probably gonna end up being two.
Yeah.
At least two.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the physical constraints on the footprint building.
Right, so what I'll do is, as Jim requested and add, so we need some more information about the pre-K and the spaces needed and the utilization plan for pre-K. I know that requirements are different. We tried to, this year, we wanted to put a pre-K at Boulevard, but we were told by the state that we could not because, and they have the capacity for it, for a pre-K at Boulevard, but we were, told no because of the physical plant. And that building needed pre-K, needed a separate space and separate exits. I mean, all the requirements for pre-K was very, very different. We were able to do it at Oxford. We had to modify some space at Oxford, but it was conducive to that. Some bathrooms and some other things that we had to make sure was available at Oxford, but we were not able to do it at Boulevard. And we knew that we were going to have those same challenges according to those, the person who facilitated if we would move into another open footprint building. So even though the capacity is there, the utilization of the space, there's some different requirements, and we can get more information around that. Do you have anything to add to that you remember, George, when they did the visits?
No, you hit it right on the head. Was strictly on access to this building, and we had enough space with utilizing the kindergarten space that gave us, I think, was almost 700 to 900 square feet, and we had to add a bathroom to it. So that was minimal. Your space at Roxelle is not there. Well, you may have areas, but you need more construction to make that space happen at that building. Canterbury, you'd have to move a lot of students around, and I don't know if it's even capable of happening in the current setup.
Yeah, and it's sometimes, I know you're looking at these numbers and you're saying, oh my gosh, you should be able to make that work within that space. But then when you're talking about pre-K, it's just a totally different dynamic. And in using a space and not as we as educators, we believe that I don't know if you want to add something to it as well, Danielle, but I know it was very different. It was a learning experience for us when we thought we could just say, hey, here's a spot, let's make it happen.
Well, that's part of the reason why we've got a PowerPoint, it's on TV, it's online.
Yeah.
The reality is that if someone sees a number here and says, hey, you've only got utilization of 65%, how come you're not able to do that? We need to be able to explain the rationale why, at a Roxelle or another building, that the numbers on the spreadsheet don't tell the whole story. The other, still, if we're looking for more data, I mentioned it before, I'm not looking for a complete transportation utilization model because I know how challenging that would be, but I would be curious to see, based upon our current transportation policy, how many students would then thus be eligible for transportation who are not currently. Now, I know for a fact that currently the majority of our students live in the Superior Road corridor with a hotspot in north of Monticello, but so they're already at the periphery of the two attendance zones. But my question would be, how many more students would be eligible for transportation? And then, without running a whole scenario, are we talking it's a few more buses, it's a few more people on a bus, or are we talking 10 or 15 buses?
And if I may, I actually have some data, but a lot of it, the first answer is we can support whatever decision is made and whatever model is decided upon. We currently transport 609 students 5 through 8. Again, a lot would depend on discussions that follow the decision, but you're looking at roughly adding additional 520 students to transportation. Right. But it's not as bad as it seems because we would utilize routing, potentially, hopefully some changes in scheduling that would allow us to utilize a bigger gap between elementary start and middle school start. That would allow us to utilize our current buses. A real rough shot at it was that we could utilize the existing bus fleet without adding any more and transport those students.
But that's why I ask. I know that's the issue with transportation. I remember years ago in the 90s, it was, you got a bus going down a route. They pick up 25 kids, they pick up 5 kids. The bus has got the same route. Conversely, when we talk about public perception and public buy-in, is if suddenly my child is walking to middle school, but now they have to take a bus, does a parent like that? Does a parent not like that? That's where my concern is. If we're adding 500 more students to transportation roles, that's a lot of kids.
Of course, we took a real quick look at it, and we, again, whatever decision is made, we can support. So these are real rough numbers. Right. But Mr. Smith was pretty confident that depending on which facilities ended up being those specific buildings, we could potentially, if we had some leeway with start times, utilize the existing fleet to accomplish that.
And I know, and hats off, I know that how difficult it is because I work for a transportation company. At the same time, those routes, look at those, I was extremely impressed. I mean, they're running like a mini public transportation system. It's pretty impressive.
Mr. Smith has done a phenomenal job with managing it.
Okay, so I've got some sort of big picture thoughts after I've had a chance to digest what you've given us here. I'm really, really interested in pre-K, in what we can do with pre-K. Okay. I'm glad you're not talking about closing any elementary schools. Right. It's distracting.
Correct.
We've been through this before. It's really, really distracting, okay? The middle schools, I mean, the 5, 6, 7, 8, it seems like making that change is, again, distracting from what we're doing. So there has to be some really, really good reasons to do it. I just need to get more information. I need to feel more comfortable with that. Is there like a pro-con? Is there like a listing of things that we get versus we don't get? I mean, there has to be strengths and weaknesses with these that you guys have kind of gone through in your decision-making process. Because that's what's, I mean, the community's going to want to hear that.
Okay, I can provide that for you.
I mean,
if you,
yeah, I mean,
that
they're
makes
gonna
you
wanna hear that.
feel more comfortable. But
Well,
just recognize that there are pros and cons to any approach that we take. We're saying for our community that we believe this is the best approach and the best way to educate our students. So just understand that. And we believe that we put the supports in place for our students. We believe it strengthens our professional development plan and opportunities for teachers to collaborate. We believe there maybe be some other opportunity to think totally out of the box about what time students come to school, what time do they leave school. We can really extend the day because we have 2 years before we will open the doors to this. So we have an opportunity to really think what do we want to offer for our student, the unlimited possibilities to think out of the box and provide this for our students in a very different way than we planned before. So,
I don't disagree with any of that, okay? I mean, that makes sense. But but it's costly. I mean, right now, our elementary schools, our middle schools have 3 grades. We have to add another grade to 2 buildings. We need, and that's gonna be costly.
The opposite.
no,
You're
it's the
reducing a
opposite. We're
grade.
reducing a grade.
You're reducing, but you're bringing more kids in. I'm
Exactly.
sorry, that's the.
Right.
Okay, you're right, but you're bringing more kids into those buildings, and those buildings,
Have the capacity for those students.
even with what Moody Nolan is designing today.
Yes.
So.
I believe so, and I verify that.
Well, I think we really need, I mean, I think we all need to have some
Right.
clarity on that, obviously. I was under the impression, the last time we met about this, we could, the buildings could be made ready to
Flexible
do
space.
this. It could be
Correct.
flexible, but there would still be a cost to make that happen.
Correct.
So I would need, I mean, is there gonna be any additional construction costs that we'd have to be considering?
Right. I was hoping, again, to get your blessing to move forward, so then we can have those conversations with the necessary parties, and specifically Moody Nolan and the team, so we can say to them that we need to make a mid-course correction. We need for you to,
Don't we have to have the numbers before we give the blessing? Because if we give the blessing and then Moody Nolan says, oh, yeah, it's gonna cost you another 1.5 million, then we're
Well-
toast.
well, we're toast if you're thinking upfront costs, you're thinking long-term costs. I mean, long-term, our enrollment is dwindling, Mr. Silverman. So when we think about the experience that we want our students to have, and we believe that this educational approach is the best approach, it may cost us more money, it may save us some dollars, but we're saying that we believe this is the best educational approach.
Well, no, look, I hate to say it, the irony is, I have been, this is what I wanted us to go to a 7-8 model 4 years ago when we wrote this, and I may have been the one who wrote the text. But my concern is that I'm extremely reticent, based upon the financial constraints, is if we say, yes, go ahead and do it, and our team spends time and effort on it, and then Moody Nolan comes back and says, hey, guys, well, your budget is 30 million for bricks and sticks, but it's gonna cost you another 1.5 to implement what you want.
Right.
Well, then I guess the question is, well, where are we supposed to find 1.5 million? And I'm using the numbers.
exactly, right.
That's that's why I'm extremely
Agreed.
hesitant about giving a
That's fair.
blessing on that until we have numbers from them to say, yeah, we can afford to do it, or, guys, it's not gonna be a possibility.
Well, all interesting stuff. I think that we have to get to the point that we're thinking, what's the most efficient? And I'm not sure that where we are is not very efficient at this point, because I think there's some signals that we're sending about more data, more information, and it's kind of hard there may be a little bit of assumption. So 6, 7, 8, maybe we think we already got it all, but again, that still is a tough situation for us. I think we do need to give the staff some kind of signal about what moving forward looks like. So, I guess I'm prepared to do that myself. And I got a couple of questions still, though. Can I ask my questions right quick?
Are you asking yourself if you can ask the question? Look, he's the
I'm
boss.
asking you.
No.
There's a lot of rumbling in the system about the new graduation requirements, and I think a set of superintendents came out and said, hey, we want volunteer service and attendance and all kinds of things that seem non-academic to play into the graduation requirements. Do we feel that there's going to be some significant change in the graduation requirements? I think there was even a bill that's beginning to be circulated around this issue. What's y'all thinking about that in terms of what our conversation?
You have, I sent to you, oh, I'm sorry, services, I'm sorry, go ahead. Thank you, Alice.
There was a recent recommendation from the state board to the state legislatures to add in additional measures for graduation. But as it's, the current recommendation, though, is strictly for the class of 2018, and that for future classes, the three existing options will be the ones that they will have to use for graduation. So they're making adjustments. They're making a request for adjustments for the class of 2018, and then going back to what we have right now in place, which are three options: earning graduation points based on end-of-course exams, remediation-free score on the college and career readiness test like ACT or SAT, or earning industry credentials and a non-remediation-free score on the work keys assessment.
So our assumptions are based on what's in place now. Is those three
The
options?
benefit, as you indicated, the new recommendations are a mix of like your core instruction and opportunities outside. Like there are recommendations to use externships or internships for capstone projects that are developed by the district, looking at attendance and participation in co-curricular activities. So, the recommendations would support any of those measures, whether we keep with the three existing, or if there is an overall adjustment for the newer recommendations to stay in place.
Okay. I guess second to last thing. I have in my head that the licensing now is K through 8. Is that what people generally have? Or what's the licensing?
Like with any configuration, we're going to be able to support certifications. And we look at certifications in two areas. You have to have the certification. And if you look at our more veteran staff, they're 1 through 8 certified. What's coming out now are more focused certifications. For example, a P3 certification instead of the 1-8. They're able to get a reading endorsement on top of that if they choose, or they're able to get a 4-5 generalist to go along with that. When you look at our intervention specialists, they're K-12.
You said 4 or 5 generalists?
It's 4 or 5 generalists can be added on to someone that has a P3 certification, so that they'd be able to do pre through 4 or 5, and then also the reading endorsement for the 3rd grade.
So what is the certification that the 7th and 8th, the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th graders, what would be their certification moving forward?
Yeah, so then you'll have your 4-9, people are coming out with a 4-9 certification.
4-9.
And then they're focused on 2 areas. They can pick math, English, science, or social studies. So they're
they have to
becoming
have a
more,
focus now.
they're more focused. And then even with the intervention specialists, they're K-12, the more veteran staff. They're now coming out with a pre-K-3 intervention specialist. So they're becoming more focused as they're coming out of colleges at this time. Our more veteran staff had a longer range, the 1-8s, the K-12s, and we all know, just because you're K-12, if you've been working in a specific area for years, you have to take that in consideration when you're staffing.
You mind just for a second?
Go ahead.
This was one of my questions as well. I know you said it, but I think it behooves us to be very deliberate about looking at our staff as it exists today and how it will work out. Would it cause greater staffing because of making this change? And if so, what are the costs associated with that? And then, as you started to talk about, what would be the staff coming in the future? So, again, I heard that you can add on things, but if people are coming in with pre-K3, then we need something else for the 4th graders who are in that same building. If it's it may work out really easily. As long as we're deliberate about looking at what it is today
Absolutely.
versus what it's going to be in the future
Right.
and how it would work out. Good.
Right.
Okay. Just last thing. I was, we are curious about what the 4th grade students can master. And I thought multiply, divide, and use fractions was on the very lightest side of math that we could find. We could have talked about place values, fractions and decimals, and things like that, it seems. I'm thinking that maybe they learn how to multiply and divide and use fractions in the 3rd grade. But anyway, 4th graders ought to be, I think in terms of how we present it, I would love to see it ratchet up a little bit, even in terms of the science that you're dealing with. It's not just the scientific inquiry, but they should be developing, when they get to that, that's why I say I'll stay out of curriculum. But the idea for me is that we ought to ratchet that up a little bit so that it looks like our new vision of what our students are doing is moving up a notch. And I envision really that I'll stay out of curriculum. So the other thing that I wanted to recognize is thanks to our engineer with a heart, he actually counted the number of people sitting around the table. So thank all
By
six.
four.
And
It's
you counted them too,
That's
right?
basic math, right?
Yeah, it's 4 by 4, right, okay. So anyway, I appreciate the work that you guys have done, and if there's other things that board members want to say at this point, anybody?
Well, we have another meeting. I mean, what's the go?
Yeah,
How are we gonna proceed with this? That's what I'm curious to know.
You got a recommendation? We do have another meeting. Dr. Dixon has promised us some information. She would like to have a nod about the direction, if she can move forward on the direction of the 5, 6, 7, 8. That would, her desire would be, she can walk out here and say, yeah, team, we got what we need to move forward on that recommendation. That's her desire. But she also has in her head that she's gonna bring more information back to us to continue that process of, firming it up. So she wants to have some idea about how we feel.
Well, Ron, we know where you stand. You're cool with it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm cool.
Well, no, cool with it. I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
Cool with it. That's a judgment opinion based
But
upon every
both those
individual.
things are true.
I don't know about that. That's a yes.
How do you feel, Beverly?
Let's go with that.
Jim?
I am very uncomfortable proceeding this way. I mean, okay.
Okay. Eric?
I'm not nodding, I'm not winking. Let me put it this way. I'm extremely uncomfortable. We got the materials on Friday. This is Thursday. I got a lot of questions. I can't sign off on something this big this soon.
Cal?
I'm comfortable with us moving forward because what I heard the superintendent say also was that she's going to be looking into it, and if there are things, she has the power to say, we can't keep going. But at this point, I think we should go forward with it.
Okay.
Didn't we, in our last retreat, this was proposed to us in one of our retreats?
There was a discussion. This is sort of the first official presentation around this.
So, okay, so there's 3 to 2 sort of.
We're not voting, just so you know.
Yeah, okay, so what's gonna happen now, though, is we're gonna have a lot of concerned parents, because it seems like we're heading in this direction. The decision seems like, because you guys have essentially 3 people, three votes to head in this direction. So I want to know what the communication strategy is to get this information out to the parents, so they're not scared. Because they're gonna be scared.
We got it. I'm gonna meet with the superintendent and discuss communication strategy with her. And if you got any ideas, give them to me or her. How about that?
I think this is gonna end up being a distraction that it doesn't need to be.
You got answers?
Do I have answers?
Yes.
I would love to see, I think the same parents that are gonna be concerned about this are gonna want to know some of the same sort of lingering information that we've asked tonight. But just sort of moving forward with it is gonna be, they're moving forward and they don't even have all their answers yet. That just sounds bad. And I know everyone's done a lot of work here, and I'm not criticizing the work. The work is great work, and it's good to think about this. But, it seems like there's some simple things that I don't understand. And I can only speak for myself. I'm one of 5 here, okay? that, I don't understand. And Eric's right. We just got this information.
So is your hesitation regarding the educational approach that we're taking, or the impact of moving this direction to the facilities plan?
Well, as I said before, I mean, I hate to say it, my issue is dollars and cents. I don't want staff to waste their time and effort going down a course that if Moody Nolan comes back and says, hey, guys, it's gonna cost you $2 million more to implement what you want, because as much as Brad's numbers were great, you still need another 4 classrooms at Monticello or Roxborough, and that's gonna cost you $250 a square foot. If we can't afford it, and then we gotta come back and say, hey, oh, guess what, guys, we can't afford it, or we're supposed to find the money, that's my concern.
So thank you. So it's more facilities, but then Jim, is your concern for parents, is it the educational approach, or is it the facilities, the impact of the facilities?
Well, it's a little bit of both, okay? I mean, there's the dollars and cents about the facilities, but there's also the rubber hitting the road. It's like start times. It's like, how are you gonna deal with the transitions? These are things that, people are gonna wanna know now.
Yeah, and we know that it's not happening to 2 years, so we have some time to work and build this, because for 2 years, our students will be next door. So getting the nod to move forward will allow us to build those plans, and get those answers for you regarding the facilities piece. I mean, we recognize that the plan that we have before us, it took some time and a lot of effort for people to bring forth. We understand that, so I just want to be clear, so I know what pieces I need to provide for you and both of you as we move forward.
Well, you have to provide it for all of us. I mean,
Right.
This, where we are, and there is a sense out there, and we're not counting votes yet. But I think it's gonna take courage that maybe we haven't had to have in the last couple of years. But this is not gonna be an easy thing, but, they're up for it, and we're up for it.
Look, this isn't about, the issue is, look, I have wanted a 7-8 for 4 years, or this model, I've wanted this model for 4 years. I have no problem.
We should have a cake so we can celebrate.
No, the issue is not the model or the curriculum, and to a high degree, that's not my issue. My issue is from being engaged in this for 6 years, and for me and Jim going to meetings, poring over change orders, and going to FAC meetings, so I think we got at least one FAC member in the back there, worrying. My concern is the budgetary outcomes from it's pure, I hate to say it, it's not academics. I'm comfortable with the academics who work. My issue is committing to something that 6 months from now, we find out we can't afford. Because with all due, as much as we got a great high school coming down the pipeline, and we're gonna have 2 really nice middle schools, we've been burned enough that I don't wanna get burned again.
Do you feel 6 months is the potential that what we would lose by going down this road? Do you feel like that's what we're putting at risk?
Look, as people constantly tell me, I'm not an architect, so I have no idea. I have no idea. My concern, though, is that to a degree, we have in the superintendent's point, I think if we went down this pathway, we have 2 years to use the combined experience at Wiley as an incubator to see what works and what doesn't work. But that doesn't take away from the fact that at the crucial decision-making period, we right now have a razor-thin margin. I shouldn't say, that's a bit of embellishment. We have a very narrow margin in regard to the middle schools. And I do not wish to do anything unless I have some serious data that's going to jeopardize that. And again,
So with that approach, we would have the 6-month window that you're talking about at risk anyway, because we would be asking for additional research around this model before we make a decision, before we give a wink and a nod, right?
The research you need is the architect saying what you can afford or not. That's not going to take 6 months.
Right, so
It shouldn't.
we have a meeting scheduled. Brad, do you know the date of that meeting?
We're going to do it next week.
Next week with Moody Nolan. So we have a meeting scheduled for next week. But I didn't want to give them a direction on either or, because I've not talked about the possibility with them. We know we were going to have flexible space, and we know that we asked them to draw, as to your point, Jim, flexible space from the very beginning. But now we would say that this is the direction we're going to go, how different those changes in those buildings will look based on
Because
this
one,
model.
because one building's gonna be much more of a, basically an oversized elementary, and the other one's gonna be more, they'd call it a junior high, but to kind of have more special, theoretically more specialized spaces.
Right.
So theoretically, you're putting all in one versus the other. As such, you don't, if you go with one building, you don't need science labs or what have you, but the question ends up being, what kind of an impact that's gonna have, not to mention the fact, I still go back to the square footage. If at Roxborough, you're at 98% capacity, that's pretty narrow when everyone else is at 75 or 80%. That's why it goes back to my concern.
Okay. So,
Okay, so I've told you what I'm uncomfortable with. I should tell you what I'm comfortable with.
okay, thank you.
So reopening the master facility plan seems to be a good idea. Okay, my personal opinion. Looking at, we have declining enrollment, we have new graduation standards, we have probably a surplus of elementary schools. We probably do. When you sort of look at it. We have elementary schools that, even if we went ahead with this, it seems like we're going ahead with this, justifying it on a couple data points, including the fact that we can put pre-K in some of the buildings, but we can't put pre-K in some of the buildings like Boulevard. So we need solutions
Yeah.
for that. And, reconvening, rethinking this, I think it makes sense, the master facilities plan. There's also other developments with the master facilities plan. When we initially thought about essentially mothballing 2 buildings at the time, that also considered that we'd be putting another ballot issue on, we go out to the voters again to match money that we get from the state. But now we're finding that the state money, we thought it was 5 years away. Now we find out it's still 5 years away. And I bet you 5 years from now, we're going to find it's 5 years away. And there's still, there's lots of House bills that have been thrown out there. Some of them are ridiculous. House bills from the State House that want to dismantle the Facilities Commission, which means there's no money available. So, I think, and it's been my impression thus far, we can't move forward on any elementary school changes until we at least have some state match, because we're limited in the amount of money that we can borrow and raise. It seems to me we need to revisit that and rethink it. Ron mentioned that it's a dated plan now, but there's a lot of good people in this community that stepped up, and they contributed to a decision-making process that included the fact that we were going to have elementary schools, middle schools, that, 3-grade elementary school, middle schools, and then the high schools. So we had people that bought into that. And so now we just can't, I feel we just can't throw that out the window. But we can use it to update the plan. And maybe the updated plan includes this intermediary school. I'm sort of, the people I talk to publicly, I'm sort of biased to have this elementary, this intermediate school. I just don't have the data in front of me to get comfortable with it at this point. Just saying.
Well, we've got to do this again. We got to do some stuff again. I don't know how soon you think we'll be ready, but it seems like it has to happen pretty quickly. So there's a meeting with
We have a
Moody
meeting.
Nolan next week.
Correct. Because remember, there is a decision that the board has to make on the 6-8 design. So they want the board to make that decision, and knowing that we could possibly move into a different configuration. So it moves the timeline, and we will get a cost to what that, if we slow the process down, we go in a different direction,
we need to know those costs, and I understand that that's important for us to know. So we'll meet with the architects next week. We can set up another meeting, however we want to do that in April, because again, we talked about, they were not going to start breaking ground on the buildings until next spring, I think around March anyways, so, so we have time.
How soon, there's been a number of things that have been brought up. How soon will you be able to address the issues that have been raised by the board members?
Let me meet with my team, meet with the architects.
So what
and
we
we'll
could
come
do,
up with
you
the
and I
timeline,
can have
we
a
can follow up
conversation,
on what
and then
that
we could-
looks like. Yep.
Yeah, and then we can make our decisions. We don't have to do that at this moment, right?
The one thing I do, and I think Jim brought it up, I think it's actually, it's overdue that we do this. We need to have, and this is more on George and Brad than the rest of the other 16, the Sweet 16, if you will, is that we really need, because I think it would help us, and I think the public as well. We had Jim mentioned the timeline. We need to get a much more, I don't want to say definitive, but much more fleshed out, I don't want to say best case, but what are the likely timelines for all these things for the elementaries? Because if we know for an empirical fact now that the earliest that we could be seeking funding is a set date, we need to have people know that, because I think there's a lot of public perception that as soon as we finish the middle schools, boom, we're going to turn around and begin the elementaries. I think we need to have that, not definitive, but much more based upon the current parameters, what that timeline would look like, because if that's saying, hey, you're with the current methodology, we're not going to be eligible for X number of years, if it's far different from what we're expecting, that as well may have an impact on the elementary plan going forward. Because if God forbid, we wouldn't finish the elementary plan till 10 years from now, that's a big difference than if we were implementing changes beforehand. Because it could easily have us closing a building or two well before we even are on a ballot for something like that.
I just have one last thing I decided after all. Just I want to address two things you said, Jim. One is distraction, the notion of distraction, and number two is the notion of fear. And the only way I want to address it is I think the best possible thing we could do is to let the educational services team focus on what their purpose in life is, and that is educating the student, which I know you agree with.
Oh, yeah.
But the point is that while you're saying it's a distraction, actually, I think it's a distraction for them to be thinking about about buildings. What if they can present us with a very strong vision for what it's going to be what our students are going to gain from this. That's going to help in all kinds of ways, and it's going to help alleviate the fear too, because that's what I think has been missing sometimes throughout this, is that it seems like the building's leading the education rather than the education's leading the buildings. I think we need the educational vision needs to be leading this project. So that's the reason I'm actually supporting this. So, and I know you agree. I'm not in any way distracted.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're obviously on the same team, but when you look at a best practice and you look at the number of districts that have the existing configurations that we have right now, and they're succeeding, why do we have to have then, another transition for ours? And that's a question someone from the public is going to come back to us and said, why did you make this decision? You were sold a bill of goods. And I don't think we're being sold a bill of goods, but it's like, we just need to have some information.
And we have new information as well.
Success is going to take care of this.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
You know that Geico commercial with Caesar, don't you?
That's the wrong guy.
No.
I think the farmer's commercial is a whole lot more entertaining than the guy goes, but we can, that's all. Okay, but you talk about a distraction, okay? I mean, you forwarded the graduation information.
Right.
And mentioned that this configuration would better ready the kids for graduation, the new graduation requirements. But yeah, I'd love to have more information on that. It's like, how? I still don't understand, and this is something, I don't think anybody really quite understands the new graduation requirements because they're in flux right now. But I think that is something that we as a district need to be addressing for not only the 2018 kids, but anyone beyond that. And you did a phenomenal presentation about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, that actually showed the gaps. Maybe it was in one of our board packets, maybe it wasn't. But I'd love to see how this new proposed thing addresses that. This is right around the corner with these 2018 kids, and we want as many of those kids to graduate underneath this new requirement. So I'd be curious to see what the impact is going to be on that.
Anything else?
When's our next board, we have a board meeting next Tuesday?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
And we have an executive session as well.
6 o'clock.
Correct.
You need a motion to adjourn?
I do?
I will make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Gainer?
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Register?
Yes.
Mr. Silverman?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Zucker?
Yes.